If you've ever loved someone who seemed to run the moment you got close, who made you question your worth every single day, who had you walking on eggshells wondering if you were too much, this video is going to change everything you think you know about love, about them, but most importantly, about yourself. But first, welcome to my channel. This is Redo Love and I'm Flora Ong, and this is where we break the cycles that keep you stuck in relationships that drain your soul instead of nourishing it. If you're tired of attracting the same emotionally unavailable people, if you're done making someone else's capacity for love the measure of your worth, if you are ready to stop chasing love and start attracting it from a place of wholeness, you are in the right place. This isn't about finding someone to complete you. This is about becoming so secure in who you are that you only accept love that feels like peace, not anxiety. We're redoing love from the inside out, one nervous system at a time. So hit that subscribe button and let's transform your relationship with love. Now, I'm about to share 5 brutal but beautiful lessons my avoidant partners taught me that completely transformed how I show up in relationship. And here's the thing. These weren't lessons they intended to teach, that's for sure. These were lessons I had to learn the hard way, through tears, through confusion, and through finally understanding the neuroscience and psychology behind why we attract what we attract. Stay until the end because lesson number 5 is going to blow your mind about why their need for space actually taught me the most important lesson about energetic boundaries. Before we dive in, I need you to understand something. If you're watching this and you're in the thick of an avoidant relationship right now, feeling like you're constantly chasing someone who's always pulling away, I see you. I've been you like 12 times over. And what I'm about to share isn't about making excuses for their behavior or convincing you to stay in something that's destroying your nervous system. This is about understanding the deeper pattern so you can finally break free from the cycle that keeps attracting the same unavailable people into your life. Because here's what I know for sure. When we understand the why behind the patterns, we can finally redo our own love story. The first lesson my avoidant partners taught me was that people love differently. I don't just mean love languages, acts of service versus gifts. I mean their nervous system is literally wired to experience love as a threat. Now let me break down the neuroscience here because this changed everything for me. When someone with an avoidant attachment style was a child, their caregivers were either emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or made emotional expression unsafe. So their developing brain did what brains do. It adapted to survive. The amygdala, which is our brain's alarm system, literally learned to associate emotional closeness with danger. So when you, with your beautiful, anxious heart, start moving closer, their nervous system doesn't register love, it registers threat. Fight or flight, freeze response kicks in, and suddenly they're not the person you fell in love with anymore. And here's what blew my mind. It's not that they don't want love. Their nervous system has just been conditioned to believe that emotional intimacy equals abandonment, or more likely engulfment. So they love through distance, through independence, through not needing you. These are good and decent people that were overwhelmed in childhood with the needs of their parents, potentially. A lot of times, the engulfment part has to do with enmeshment. It has to do with the fact that they were overly depended on in an emotional way at a very young age, often parentified. Any type of emotion, like overwhelming emotion, emotions of love, emotions of intimacy, also feel like they are about to be again engulfed, again enmeshed. And so they desperately seek their independence. And for those of us with an anxious attachment style, we interpret this as rejection, when it's actually their way of trying to maintain the relationship without their nervous system going into complete overwhelm by that engulfment. Understanding this doesn't mean you accept breadcrumbs. It means you stop taking their coping mechanisms personally, right? Because it's not personal, it's just how they function. Their need for space is not about your worth. It's their nervous system survival strategy. Before we move on to the second lesson, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I discovered this without even knowing what I was discovering. When I came out of my marriage, the first relationship that I got into was extremely toxic because I was still extremely anxious, didn't know anything about it, and ended up, of course, with an avoidant. In this relationship, it took us 6 months before we met because this is how avoidant this person was. We did finally meet, and even though when we finally met, I was a bit unclear about how I felt about him, we did fall into relationship. We ended up dating, and what would happen would be that we would hang out, it would be amazing, we would be all lovey-dovey, all the like wonderful things, and then it would take him about 2 weeks to circle back. It didn't matter how many times I texted him. It didn't matter how many times I called him. It didn't matter how much I tried to get his attention. He would continually just not be responsive. And because I was so anxious at the time, I was willing to take any bit of breadcrumb I could get. But what I did notice over time was this whole 2-week kind of reset period, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't know why it was kind of like that. Over time, I mean, it was very clear that this guy loved me, you know, in an incredible way, but was also dealing with his own demons that didn't allow him to kind of really be in the relationship in the way that any healthy person would be. At the same time, I was extremely unhealthy at that time too. So lesson 2 nearly drove me crazy before it set me free. You see, learning to distinguish between my intuition and my trauma response is one of the greatest gifts that I've gotten from this, because when you're with an avoidant partner, you're constantly questioning your reality. They might say they care while acting completely distant, which is exactly what happens in this case. And they might say they want the relationship while consistently choosing everything else first, exactly what happened in this case. And your anxious nervous system is screaming that something is wrong while your logical mind is trying to make sense of the mixed messages. What you discover is that the avoidant partners often gaslight, and it's not even intentional, but it's because of the emotional unavailability. They make you doubt your own perceptions. You feel like something is off, but they tell you everything is fine. You sense distance, but they say you're being needy or crazy. You feel unimportant, but they say you're overthinking. The neuroscience here is very crucial because your vagus nerve, which connects your brain to your body, is constantly sending you information about safety and connection. Your gut feelings, that tightness in your chest, that anxiety in your stomach, these are data points from your nervous system about the quality of the connection. But when you have anxious attachment, we've been conditioned to override our intuition. We've learned that our emotional responses are too much, so we stop trusting our inner knowing. We rationalize these red flags instead of honoring them, and then we don't even believe what our own body is telling us. It's hard to tell the difference whether it's a trauma response or our inner wisdom because you don't trust yourself. Now, a trauma response feels frantic, it feels urgent, like I need to do something right now. Intuition, it's clear, it's calm, it's knowing, even when it's telling you something you don't want to hear. Your body knows when someone isn't emotionally available, even when your mind is making excuses for them. Your nervous system knows when you're not a priority, even when they're saying all the right words. And learning to trust this inner knowing is how you stop abandoning yourself for someone who's already abandoned the relationship emotionally. And you will notice that this anxiety oftentimes gets confused with chemistry. Oftentimes, like within the first, few meetings with somebody like this, especially if you're anxious and they are avoidant, you start feeling those feelings of what you think is chemistry, what you think is butterflies, but really what it is a lot of times is you just waiting for them to call, knowing that they may not. It's you waiting for a response, thinking that, like, excited about getting the response, but not knowing if it's coming. So that feeling of being uncomfortable and not knowing, while there's a normal amount of butterflies that we should all be feeling in the beginning, there is a very specific sense that us anxious people feel when we're dealing with somebody who's avoidant, because let's face it, we felt these feelings before and they did not start in adulthood. So this brings me to lesson 3, which is self-soothing. And I'm not talking about bubble baths and face masks, although those are good too. I'm talking about legitimate nervous system regulation that allows you to stay in your power when everything in you wants to chase, to fix, to convince them to love you the way that you need. When an avoidant partner goes quiet, when they need space, when they suddenly become distant, your nervous system goes into absolute panic mode. Your dorsal vagal complex, that vagus nerve, activates. This is the part of your nervous system that makes you feel like you're drowning, like you can't breathe, like you need to do something, anything to make the anxiety stop. Here's what I learned. The moment you chase that anxiety, relief by reaching out, by trying to fix things, by making yourself smaller to make them comfortable, you're actually dysregulating both of your nervous systems further. Cannot tell you the amount of fake numbers I had because of the amount of times I was blocked by this particular person, and all in an effort to reach out, because if I felt like if I couldn't get a hold of him, then I couldn't breathe. I would do anything in that moment to get in touch with him and to just be soothed by knowing that he was still there. Ultimately, that was what I was looking for, and the compulsiveness comes from this feeling like there is something that is really wrong, like you will be abandoned and you will be left again. Without understanding what is actually happening, the feeling is so overwhelming that you just become compulsive. Real self-soothing looks like this. When your nervous system starts firing, you pause. You breathe deeply into your belly, activating your vagus nerve. You remind your nervous system that you're safe right then in that moment. You might do bilateral stimulation, crossing your arms over your chest and alternating gentle taps on each shoulder. You might go for a walk, letting your feet connect with the earth. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal is to feel without making it mean something about your worth. To feel the anxiety without making their need for space mean you're not enough. You see, when you learn to self-soothe, you're not just managing the relationship, you're literally rewiring your attachment system. You see, being anxious makes you compulsive. That compulsion is trying to reduce your own anxiety, but we don't realize this, right? We think like, oh, well, I got to get an answer. Oh, well, I need to know something. Oh, well, we got to figure this out. Oh, well, we got to solve this problem. And we do that by sometimes acting crazy. That's why, the majority of the crazy people out there are probably, lean anxious, in relationships, right? I, for example, would get fake numbers every time he blocked me, as though, that wasn't hint enough. And I would get fake phone numbers and text him and call him from those fake phone numbers. I couldn't accept a boundary because I had no boundaries with myself. Lesson number 4 nearly broke me before it ultimately healed me. You see, learning to love myself despite someone not loving me the way that I needed was one of the greatest lessons I have ever gotten. And this isn't about like positive affirmations and fake it till you make it. This is about understanding that your worth is never determined by somebody else's capacity to see it. There's that saying or that meme or whatever it is, if you give somebody a very expensive gift and they don't recognize its value, it doesn't make it any less valuable. Like you could bring a Monet painting to somebody in, a third world country that doesn't know anything about painting, and they might just like toss it to the side. But it doesn't make that painting any less valuable than it is. The same is true for you. If you keep knocking on the wrong doors, if you keep ending up in relationship with people that can't see it, it doesn't mean that your value isn't there. It just means that these people aren't available to see it. Avoidance will make you feel like you're too much, like you're too needy, like you're emotional. And if you're like me, you probably try to be less emotional, less needy, less you. But every time you abandon yourself to make them comfortable, you're actually confirming your nervous system that you're not worthy of love exactly as you are. You see, your subconscious is constantly seeking the familiar. The familiar to somebody who's anxious is that they will be abandoned. Whether the familiar is good or not, your subconscious is still constantly seeking it. It's only seeking what it knows how to deal with. It is only seeking what it is comfortable in, not what is healthy, not what is good for you. And so if you have a core wound, subconscious core wound of abandonment, you will find all of the proof in real life that you will be abandoned. You will pick avoidant partners in order to be abandoned so your subconscious can prove itself true. And the neuroscience behind self-love is even more fascinating, because when we practice genuine self-compassion and recognize these things, we activate the caregiving system in our brain. We release oxytocin and opioids and the chemicals that we get from external love. We literally are becoming our own secure attachment figure. But here's what this looked like for me. It meant feeling the pain of not being chosen and then choosing myself anyway. It meant recognizing that their inability to meet my emotional needs was not evidence that my needs were wrong. I had to understand that someone else's limitations in love don't reflect my lovability. And this lesson taught me that love isn't something I need to earn or prove. Love is a birthright. And when I finally understood this in my nervous system, not just in my head, everything really changed. I stopped attracting people who couldn't see my worth because I was no longer looking for external validation of something I already knew to be true. This brings me to lesson number 5, the one that revolutionized how I show up in relationships. Learning about energetic boundaries through the painful experience of constantly giving more than I received. You see, avoidant partners are masters of energetic boundaries. Sometimes, most of the time, to a fault. They give what they want to give when they want to give it. They don't overtext, they don't chase, they don't lose themselves in love. And for those of us who are anxious, this can feel like rejection. But it's actually a masterclass in energetic reciprocity. In our brains have something called mirror neurons that are constantly picking up on and reflecting the energy of others. When you are anxiously attached, you often use overgiving to regulate your own nervous system. You text first to calm your anxiety, you plan dates to feel in control, you give more emotional energy to prove your worth. But energy is information. When someone constantly gives less than they receive, they're showing their level of investment. And when you're always the one initiating, pursuing, doing the emotional labor, you're in an energetically imbalanced dynamic that will eventually exhaust your nervous system. The lesson my avoidant partners taught me, often painfully, is about matching that energy. If they text you once a week, you text once a week. If they're emotionally unavailable, you become so. If they can't prioritize the relationship, you start prioritizing yourself. And this is not a game. We're not manipulating. This is about honoring your own energy as sacred. It's about understanding that reciprocity is a fundamental requirement of healthy relationships. It's about learning that when you chase someone else's energy, you're actually training them that your energy isn't valuable. And when I finally learned to match energy instead of chasing it, everything changed again. I stopped exhausting myself trying to love someone into loving me back. I started paying attention to what people showed me through their actions, not just through their words. And I discovered that my energy is precious, too precious to waste on someone who doesn't know how to value it. So these 5 lessons were just the beginning of my transformation. They taught me that healing isn't about finding someone who doesn't trigger your attachment wounds. It's about healing those wounds so deeply that you're no longer unconsciously attracted to people who can't meet your needs. But there are 5 more life-changing lessons that my avoidant partners taught me, and they get even deeper in part 2. I'm going to share how they taught me the difference between interdependence and codependence, and why patience actually changes everything when you understand the nervous system regulation. What real love is supposed to feel like, why their communication patterns have nothing to do with your worth, and the hardest lesson of all, why your healing is not their awakening. If this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for part 2, and let me know in the comments which of these 5 lessons hit you the hardest. I read every single comment because your healing journey matters to me. And remember, you don't need to fix anyone to be worthy of love. You just need to come home to yourself. That's how we redo love, from the inside out.